Hello and welcome to this Shadowstones tutorial. In it, we will be going over the techniques and the process of making Shadowstones, starting with your video editing software. I currently use the Movie Studio Platinum. It's a Sony brand. The Steam version here, I picked it up for $20-some last summer during the June summer sale, Steam summer sale. I think it's $50 normally. And so if you're planning to do some sort of a lot of Go content and try to get some high quality stuff, I would recommend at least getting this entry level version that I have here. I think there's also Adobe Premiere and Sony Vegas, and there's a ton of other video editing softwares that do more than just the basic splicing. As you can see here, there's multiple tracks, and that's multiple layers of video and audio and stuff. I don't think you can do that on something like a Windows Movie Maker. The first step is to, of course, get your Go recorded video, and on here, I actually have two monitors set up, so I should probably put this over here so you can see it. How do I get you to dock? Okay. First, import whatever video you're working on in the RAW form here. I recommend using templates, as I mentioned before. For instance, this whole board is kind of ugly color and layout. I don't particularly like it. So what I do is I use a board template. And what this does, this crops down to just the board. And this will be important for overlaying the Shadowstones later. So I crop down the board, and then you use this button here, which is called track motion, or whatever your software's equivalent is, and I move it into this position, one if the gets started attacking. And this is what puts the board in the same exact spot every time. This is a square, so that no matter what square I put over here, it's going to overlay exact. So now the board's in the right spot, now you gotta figure out what you want to overlay. So in this, let's see if I can do this. Another thing I would recommend, getting two monitors, just because it's so much easier to see what we're doing. So with the first, say, 6 moves here, White decided to do this little probe thing. And let's just say that, Black is thinking of doing this sort of sequence, follow the mouse. It's gonna extend, and then White's gonna Hane, Black is gonna block. White will extend, Black will turn, and then White does the tiger's mouth thing. So you want to represent that in Shadowstones. That's the sequence you decided that you want to do. So now we're going to leave this editing software here, and we're going to go over to KGS. Okay, so now that we're in KGS, the easiest thing to do would probably be just bring up your game log. It doesn't necessarily have to be on KGS, but the overlay, the shadow overlay, needs to be in the same program as what you recorded in, because it needs to match and mirror the format, the colors, the layout, the style as close as possible, so that when they're overlaid, it's not that noticeable that there's actually an overlap. If you take this and combine it with GoPanda, you're going to be able to tell that there's quite a bit of difference. So what I do to get the overlay is I take a bunch of screenshots. So there's a button on your keyboard in the upper right called Print Screen, if you're unaware of it. And what that will do is it will take the screen as it is now, with the exception of your mouse, and copy it. Now, if you have your mouse on the board like this, and there's that Shadowstone on there, like where you're thinking of placing it, that will be copied. So if you're doing this and you're taking screenshots, make sure to move your mouse off of the board so that's not on there. It can be kind of annoying. Another thing with KGS before we get into the pasting side is that all the black stones are the same image. The white stones are not. As you can see, they have different designs. And if you look at my recent Shadowstones video, you'll see that there's some weird crosshatch overlay. It's because these white stones are different from what the game was, and there's no real way to control it. It's completely random. If I were to close this right now and start up and place all these stones in the same spot, they would be a different pattern, most likely. So let's back up. Okay, so now you don't need any real fancy imaging software. I just use Paint. It's good enough for what it does. And what you're going to do is, after you push that print screen button, that's like the copy, like the Control-C copy. What you're going to do is hold down Control and click V. I believe you can also right-click and click Paste, and it'll do the same thing. So now this is the screen. So this left side is what I'm recording with. There's XSplit, of course. And over here on the right side is my right monitor. So what we want is this part of the board. So you're just going to make sure you have the Select tool, Select Drag, and somewhat over the board. You don't have to be exact right away. and click crop. And that's going to just get rid of everything else. And then I'm going to zoom in. You can use the, I don't use the zoom button. This is the zoom button. I use control and scroll up to zoom in. And then what I want to do is get rid of all this other junk. And the easiest way I found to do it is just to do Control A, which is going to select the whole image, even the stuff over on the side here, and then drag this up to the edge until the green just disappears like that. Now I'm going to press Escape to deselect it so I can move around without having to click that. I'm going to scroll all the way to the right. As you can see, this white stuff is just the edge of the board because I moved it over that many pixels. We're going to scroll down to halfway down. There's this little box right here. And what this is going to do is drag the edge of the canvas in, and we're going to drag that again to the edge of the green. So it's just the board again. One more thing, we're going to go down to the bottom, do the same thing. The center here, there's a box. You can drag it up, and there you go. So now we have the board, the starting position of the board with white stone circle. This is the move that white just played, and this is going to be the starting position for the shadow stones. So what now we're going to do is save this we're going to save this as I don't know, example 1, and it's the first move of example 1, or it's the starting position of example 1. Recall what we saw in the other video. In the video I was pointing out that black can play this move, and if black does, white's going to do this, black's going to reply, and it's going to do this sort of sequence. So the first move is for black to do this. First thing you should notice is that white's stone lost the circle, so go up to edit here, add the circle back, just to keep track for the viewers of what stone was referencing, or what stone started it. And then we're just going to repeat the process. So now that black played this move, we're going to print screen. We're going to paste, crop, move it, escape, go all the way to the right, trim it, go down and trim it again. Save as example 01. This is the second move. Okay, now white's reply, as I said it in there, as I showed in that video, was for him to do this. In order to place white stones, you do you hold on Shift and click, and it'll place a white stone. If you just click without any modifiers, it places a black stone. So white's gonna hide here. Again, moving the mouse off screen, print screen, and just repeat the process until you get your whole sequence. So I will cut the video here to finish the rest of the sequence. Okay, so now that we have all 7 images, the starting image and then 6 moves later, what we're going to do is we're going to put it and drag it into, I'm going to move this off screen, we're going to drag it into an image above this, or a track above the video recording. And what I'm going to do is just drag them one at a time in order. The length doesn't matter here, they're static images and we can make them as long as short as we need, so I'm just leaving them alone for now. So now let's find the start. Drag this over here. Okay, so the start of the sequence starts when, I'm going to zoom in here, when my mouse reaches this point. So this is the first move. So I want to make sure that this thing is before that first move. Now, if you have some stuff going in front of this, I would also recommend using a fade tool to transition from the base board into your static image here. I typically do 30 frames, which is 1 full second, but in this case, there's only like 15, 16 frames before this. So just as much time as you can get. As you can see, the board is not in the right spot. The board is just like the video in that it's pre-cropped, but it's not in the right position. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the cursor all the way to the front, do track motion, and use the same formatting that I used before. And this is why I recommend doing formatting and templates, because it saves a whole lot of time. And now this board is in the exact same position as it was on the video. I should mention before I forget. Let's go back. When you're taking your screenshots for use in the Shadowstones, you want to make sure to have the same screen layout as you did recording it. So if you recorded it in full screen, which is the easiest thing to do, if you recorded it in full screen, make sure that when you're taking the screenshots, it's also in full screen. If you record and only do like not a maximized window, then you have to make sure that at least the image is the same size. And it's hard to control because the board does scale. As you can see, it does scale. So the easiest thing to do is just maximize it. If you're doing it on GoPanda, again, you want to make sure that you have it consistent. During the game, there's a full screen feature which changes the size of the board. There's also coordinates toggled on and off. Make sure if you're using coordinates in the game, you're using coordinates in the board simulator here. The process for GoPanda is similar, except for the white stones in GoPanda don't have the stripes on them, so you don't have that weird cross-hatching overlay. Alright, so back to the video editing. Okay, so the board is now in the same position as it was before, but before we determine how long each snapshot should take, we need to be able to see what we're doing and the cursor behind it. And so this is actually a new technique that I learned with this last video. The one before it, I did it the hard way. Each one of these images has this button up on top, and what this does is changes the opacity. So you can drag this down to 50%, which is what I use 50%, and you can do that to each one of the images. That takes a long time, and so I was like, well, if I'm doing 20 of these examples and each one is 5 to 10 images long, that's a lot of clicking and editing. It'd be cool if I could just do the whole track, and you can do the whole track. And so the way you do that is by making a video envelope. So insert video envelope, making sure that this track is the one that's selected, and composite level is what you want. And so that does is it creates this this bar that goes across the whole thing. And in order to select it, you just grab it and drag it down. And so this will change the visual level or the transparency to half. And so you can see I can now see the mouse, whereas I couldn't before. If this is at full... Oh, you know what? You can't see this, can you? Okay. So I don't recall what happened there. I'm gonna undo. Okay, so the mouse is now turning there. That's Waitanne. We're gonna drag the edge of this so that it reflects Waitanne. The mouse moves there. That's the start of the next one. White extends. We're going to drag it again. That's the start of this one. Black is going to turn, which is the start of this one. And then white makes the tiger's mouth, which is the start of this one. So this last image you can drag as long as you want, but at some point you're going to want to end the example. And similar to before, I'm going to use the fade tool to make it a 30-second or 30 frame or 1 second decline. Oops. That happens a lot. Okay. So let's say we're going to hold it for a few seconds, and now this will fade the stones, and then it eases the viewer back into the regular board. So now looking at the whole thing, it's going to start from the video, transition into the screenshots, do the sequence, and then transition back into the board, or into the video. And there you go. So that is how I do shadow stones. I should have prefaced the video that this shadow stones is very intensive. There's a lot of minor, minuscule things that you have to do. The last Go video that I did, I was actually watching the Lee Sedol match while I was setting up the shadow stones, just because I could do it mindlessly, because I knew what sequences and lining up that stuff. So it doesn't take a whole lot of attention. It just takes a lot of time, and I think it takes about 2 or even 3 times as long to make a video than it did before, even though there's only, like I said, 20 examples in there, and they're 5 moves a piece. All that screenshotting, cropping is very, very time intensive. I think I covered everything I was going to mention as far as tips and tricks goes. So that is it for shadow stones. I mean, it's not really that difficult. It's just a matter of setting it up and spending the time to do it. If you are a content creator and you would like to use shadow stones and the idea of overlaying stones and stuff like that, feel free, go ahead. That is why I'm making this video. I am trying to show you how I do it. Now, the way I do it is not necessarily the only way to do it. In fact, I've done about 2 or 3 iterations of different approaches to doing this, and I found that this one was the most consistent, the easiest to do, the quickest to set up, and that sort of thing. If I was unclear in any of the explanations or any of the steps, let me know. I'd be happy to ask some questions. The video editing software specific ones, I'm only really familiar with the Movie Studio Platinum. I know there are other video editing softwares out there and they have similar features, but not necessarily the same ones. So you might have to look up and Google some tutorials like how do I change the opacity of an entire track or things like that in order to figure out how to do that. But the rest of it is all basic to Microsoft, like the print screen, Microsoft Windows, like the print screen and Paint, Microsoft Paint. Those are tools that are free, already available. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like it. If you're new around here, subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or feedback, especially about Shadowstones and how to set that up, let me know. I am here to help. Thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.